Hi, we're here with Anu Mehta, and me, Richard Flook, and we're talking about the new book, How Can I Heal? And Anu has just asked me an interesting question about why did I write this book, and why did I write the previous books? Why am I sick? Why shouldn't I eat genetically modified foods, and how can I heal? Well, and she asked me, was I really angry? And I said, absolutely angry, just beyond angry, because I was talking about I lost my mother when I was about 11 or 12. I can't remember exactly the date or the time. I remember the events, but not the actual date or time. And she had breast cancer, and she had the standard of care, which is chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and surgery, which is the gold standard of care 50 years on, exactly the same stuff. So it just, yes, did it make me angry? But during my journey, and I think writing this one, I really understood why I was so angry. And I think also the last 3 years made me truly understand why I was so angry. And it really does boil down to the capture of the medical profession. And I talk about this in the very first chapter of the book, which is called The Dark. And it really boils down to what is called Rockefeller medicine. You may have heard of Rockefeller, this multi-billionaire who's still possibly, in nowadays money, is still one of the richest men in the world, although he's dead. And he introduced a byproduct into every single medical school in the world, a byproduct of his oil, which was Standard Oil, which was just pharmaceutical drugs that were based on oil. And he monopolized the whole of medicine, not him individually, but that was his mantra. He got rid of all energetic medicine or magnetic medicine or light medicine or homeopathic medicine or Chinese medicine, destroyed it. It took 7 years. Went across the whole of America and Canada, got rid of all teaching of women as well. They captured every single university, him and another guy called Carnegie. Then the whole thing spread around America, Australasia, didn't go into Russia, but through the English influence, it went into India, but got very tainted. So, but this model, you see, does one of two things. It keeps people sick for as long as you possibly can be, so that they can then provide a pharmaceutical drug that keeps people sort of sick, but not dead. And then at the same time, doesn't offer a way to heal. And then they wrap all of this up in a very interesting model whereby they say the only people that are allowed to supply these drugs are medical doctors, that vitamins, minerals, and other interventions are completely useless. And then from there, they capture all the agencies or the governing agencies. We see this in the United States, in the UK. I think they've even captured a lot of them in India. They capture politicians, and it's just crazy the way they've done it. And they brainwash people, and they take wonderful doctors. I mean, like I said, some of my best friends are doctors, and they brainwash them, or they stop them saying things that they believe. And it's a very fascinating model. And am I angry about that? No, not anymore, because now I know. And when you have that knowledge, it's okay, because that then gives you the chance to go, okay, so well, if that's that model, and the only people that benefit are the people at the top who become multi-billionaires. We've seen that during the last 3 years, where there was a transfer of wealth from the poor people and the middle-class people to the multi-billionaires. And it was a transfer of trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And so people just decimated, their lives were decimated. And yet these billionaires became even richer and richer and richer. And this has gone on throughout all of man's life. So it's, am I angry about it? No. I think there's a shift and a change that needs to be made. But my focus has been healing. And what I realized and what I dug up in the healing were ways that we can heal that you will not know about. I'm sure you might know pieces of it, but you won't know the whole story. So this is why I wrote the book. And did I start off angry? Yeah, absolutely. 2020, I was so frustrated. It actually made me ill, Anu. It really did. So I had to clear it because it wasn't serving me, and nor will it serve anybody here. So we just got to learn to bring our healing power back to ourselves and learn how to do that. So that's what that is. Does that answer your question, though, Anna?
Yes, it does, because I was so curious, because the way you spoke, it sounded like there was, there's one thing called passion. There's another thing called anger. What drives us really is very, very beautiful. And it's a process, I think. All of us go through anger. That's a part of, I think Janice will tell us, it's a part of grieving. And it's beautiful. So it's not like we have to control our anger or anything. But I was just curious. Thank you so much. And the next question was your journey from, why am I sick? And I would keep laughing. Why am I sick? Tell me, why am I sick? To now, please, Richard, how can I heal? And this completes it, because when people knew why they are unwell, the next question would be, okay, now I know. Can you tell me how to get well? So what's different between why am I sick and how can I heal? Thank you so much, Richard. Over to you.
That's a great question. Really great question, Anu. What's the difference is, well, in 2000 and, I can't remember when it was when I first came across this material. 1993, actually, I came across the material of Hammer's work, and I wrote the book, Why Am I Sick, in 2000, and it was published, the first edition, in 2008, and then it was taken on by Hay House. So the actual story is, Hay House said, would you write another book? And I said, yeah, I'll write another one. They wanted me to call that Meta Healing, but that didn't happen. So we renamed it How Can I Heal? And then I wrote why you shouldn't eat genetically modified foods, as an attempt to, well, that's me getting angry, because I realized that the whole food system had been captured by big agra, just Monsanto Bayer now. And they it just annoyed me. So I wrote this book. Hay House didn't want that. I was not a problem. But basically then, it drove me then to ask these questions of, how can I heal? How is it that we can truly heal? Because there were so many unanswered questions. Why is it that I would go myself, say, to the medical doctor, and I'd say, well, I've got, I think, an ear infection. Can you look inside? Yes, absolutely. You've got an ear infection. Here's some antibiotics. And I'd say, what happens if I don't want to take the antibiotics? Well, you'd be stupid. You'd be daft. And I go, yes, but are there other ways that I can actually heal this? No other way. And I go, no, that's not the answer I'm looking for. That's your only answer. Let's put an analogy with a car. It's like walking into a garage, and they look at the car, and you say, well, it's lost power. And the mechanic turns around and says, that's because of this. And you go, okay, so what do we do about it? Oh, well, I'll change it, and that'll be $1,000 whatever, €1,000, several thousand rupees. And so you do that, and you take the car out, all happy that it's been fixed, not fixed. So you take it back in, and it's the same problem. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, it's something else then. So they go in, they fix that, and same thing, over and over and over again. I'm sure we've all been there with our cars, because we don't know. So I made it my decision to go and find out what I didn't know. And at the same time, how come, I wanted to answer a very important question. How come something that I've been involved in most of my life, from 1990s, right to now, is when I would assist a client to release a traumatic event, which I knew was connected to the issue or the disease. I knew that from Hammer's work, right? Why did many of them get so much better? And I went, where's the research? Where is it? And I couldn't find it for many years. I did a bit in Why Am I Sick? But since the internet, you know, I could go off and find absolute, conclusive, without a shadow of a doubt, evidence and links to how what I was doing on a cognitive level, meaning by cognitive, changing the way that we think about a traumatic event and taking the energy off of it, I worked out how that really works. And that's what I really want to share with everybody today, because I think this one piece explains things like drum therapy, acupuncture, homeopathy, EFT, NLP, whatever therapeutic intervention you want to come up with, we now have that answer, right? So does that sort of give you an idea regarding your question, Anu?
Yes, kind of. I'm not still very clear, Richard. If you can give me a little bit more around, because I was reading your book and it talks about water, it talks about mitochondria, it talks about melanin. I mean, each of these terminologies are kind of very, you need some time to explain them. But in just, if you could give us something which, how is it different? How is it different from New German medicine? How is it different from what you have found out? How is it going to make people look at things differently? I was really curious to know that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, in the last 2 months, I've only pieced all of this together. So it's great stuff. It's in the book, but this just absolutely has changed everything. So let me just say what healing is not. Healing is not DNA. Can I say that? It's nothing. DNA could be somewhat involved, but it's not. That's not what it is. Which also means that an mRNA intervention, well, that's just garbage. That's interesting as well. Secondly, when we talk about water, most people think, well, the water that comes out of your tap, is that what's inside you? Well, to a degree, but it's very unique, different water, and it has unique properties. We talk about mitochondria, which people probably not aware. They might have done a little bit at school, and they learned about these little things in cells. Yeah, great. So what? And then another thing called melanin, which actually answers the question of how Hammer's work works. But then there's other things which I know from the beautiful Indian people is, you know, we've seen miraculous healings. I know, I've witnessed stuff, right, that go on. And there's also, how does it answer things like, you know, time travel and all that sort of other stuff? It doesn't make any sense. We have all this information, but why? Why are we stuck in this model where we are just, you know, confined, and whenever we get ill, we have to give all our power to someone else who necessarily doesn't know what they're fixing or how it actually really works. So this was the question I wanted answering, and that's what's inside the book. So let's just talk briefly about that, these three factors, and explain it, I think, in a specific way. So let's let me explain a couple of things. When we are, as human beings, I don't even like to call us human beings, because that's a hue of a man or a hue of a woman. We are people. This is our race, people. And we are very, very intelligent in many ways and pretty daft in others. But we have, how do we work? Why do we get disease? And how can we, once we really truly understand that, how can we heal? And I think the best way to understand that is to go into this beautiful piece of theory that will open up doors to you. Hopefully I can explain it well enough without taking you on too long a journey. And there's one key piece that what we're looking at is Mother Nature. Okay, she doesn't make mistakes, just doesn't. But she's cruel and beautiful at the same time. So, you know, but how do we use that understanding in order to heal? Now, there are three factors. One of them is melanin, and I'm going to talk about mobile phones and computers in a minute about that. I'm going to talk about water, but not any old water. I'm going to talk about structured water. And I'm also going to talk about mitochondria. And it appears, well, here's one really basic question. What's the difference between you being alive and a cadaver, a dead piece of flesh? Energy. That's it. Yeah. When you talk to anybody in the medical profession, they go, doesn't exist. No. But it really is real. Energy is the difference. And you go, well, if energy is the difference, why don't we look at energy when we heal? Because if you have lots of energy, I don't know whether you've ever noticed this, if people have lots of energy and good energy and they're alive and they're well and they're kicking and they're enjoying life, they're well. You know, they don't get ill. They stay well. But as soon as they lose that, then it can cause them to get ill. And then other things can happen along the way. And so my answer was, why? Why does that work and how does it work? What I discovered was that there were three key factors. But in order to understand those three key factors, let's look at a computer, because it's a great analogy. And then I'll link it to a human because it's a bit more complicated. But everybody understands a mobile phone. So here's an iPhone. And an iPhone, inside of it has chips, silicon chips, that allow it to take information that we push in or talk into it, and then display the information back to us on a screen. And it does it in an amazing way because it's touch sensitive, as you know. So there's an iPhone, it could be an Android phone. I don't really care which one it is. But they all have these little chips. And these chips, so for want of a better way of describing them, are flat, aren't they? They're flat little chips. I think I even have a picture of a chip in here somewhere I could share with you in case you are most people familiar with silicon chips? Yes, I hope so. If you're not, then let me know and I could put up a picture. But these are the things that process the information from when you put it in to when it comes back out. It's a process, and they're very clever, but they're two-dimensional. They're flat. First particular piece. How do we power these chips, these silicon chips? We power them with lithium-ion batteries. And if you've ever opened up one of these, there is a little battery in there. It's quite flat. I know because I've changed a few in my life. And then also we have memory as well. So if you look inside your mobile phone, you might find it says 64 gigabytes or 128 gigabytes or 256 gigabytes of memory, which is how your photographs get stored, your videos get stored, your information gets stored on the phone. So we have these processing units, silicon chips, who run on lithium-ion batteries or some sort of battery, not necessarily lithium-ion, and they have a memory in them. Well, lo and behold, you are really the first major wonderful incarnation of a processing unit, a quantum biological computer, so say. But I'm just using this as an analogy. So where is your central processing unit? Well, your central processing unit is melanin. Now, melanin is this stuff that's on the outside of me that's making me brown. I get brown because there's a specific reason we have to get brown, whether you're Indian, you're Afro-Caribbean, or whether you live in the north of America, in Canada, and I did for a while. Melanin is absolutely essential because it's the powerhouse of the central processing unit inside you. And you might say, well, it's on all your skin. Yes, it also surrounds every single organ in your body. It's also inside your brain. And there is a very interesting organ. I can actually just share that with you. It's called the substantia nigra. And what that actually means is substantially black. And it is black inside the brain. And the question is, why? Why? What is happening here? And I'll come back to it in a second. So melanin is our central processing unit. It is our little CPU, as they call it, central processing units, our silicon chips, but it's way, way more amazing than that. So how does it get powered? Well, I don't know whether you have ever come across the fact that come across mitochondria. Have you people come across mitochondria? I don't know whether they have. I'm trying to find my my picture of mitochondria. I've got pictures of cells here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So mitochondria, I'll share that with you, are little tiny, what would you call them? They're little tiny powerhouses inside every single cell. So this is what's inside a cell. It's a cell membrane, a nucleus, mitochondria, and structured water, which I'll come back to in a second. But you see all those little tiny dots that are surround the nucleus? That's mitochondria. Now, why are mitochondria important? Because mitochondria take glucose, which we commonly know as sugar, or, get a load of this, fat, F-A-T. Yes, all the women out there, fat, F-A-T, in the form of ketones, which are smaller, long, medium chain triglycerides. They're fat. And they turn that into energy by a very long process called the citric acid cycle, or the Krebs cycle, named after the guy Hans Krebs who discovered that. And what they do is something amazing. So mitochondria take oxygen, they take glucose, as in sugar, very important. It's not the sugar you necessarily put in your tea, but it's glucose, and fat, as in ketones. And they can use that as fuel to create heat through a process called the citric acid cycle, which exchanges electrons, okay? Electrons. Now, these things run, the little chips inside this runs on electrons, right? You run on electrons. Now, also, if you pass electrons, which creates an electromagnetic field, you get magnetism, you get electricity, and you get power. Okay, so we're coming back to that original question. What's the difference between someone who's alive and dead? Energy. That transference of energy is power. But what are the mitochondria actually doing? Now, do you remember as a kid, you may have taken a powder, and it was called jelly or jello. And this powder you took and you added it must be hot water to this powder. And then you left it overnight, and as it cooled, it then turned into this jelly-like substance. And you went, wow, isn't that crazy? And we could eat it. Well, look at the cell Okay, look at what's inside a cell. It's jelly-like. Now, why is that so poignant? Why is that so important? Well, it appears that this type of water does something incredible. It's structured water. And structured water has an electrical charge to it. Did you hear me? It has an electrical charge to it. It also does something else, which I'll cover in a minute. So structured water has an electrical charge. So we talked about lithium-ion battery, silicon chips, and our ability to be able to communicate with these things and get information out. We have mitochondria, which power the structured water, which give heat to the normal water to create it into a jelly-like substance, which gives us the battery that we need. Now we've got one other piece. Do you remember I said that inside this we have memory in the form of what they call gigabytes? How the hell do we get memory? Well, it appears something else. Structured water holds inside of its structure light. And that light is our memory bank. It's how we access the memories from all the things we really have not created yet in the future, our memories from the past, the fact it remembers our gender, whether we're male, female. It gives us access to the spirit and Mother Earth. This water has an incredible just ability so it's unbelievable. So let me just reiterate this. Silicon chip inside a phone has a battery, lithium-ion battery, and gigabytes of memory. Human beings have melanin, which is a carbon-based, this is incredible, this bit, carbon-based processing unit, if you want to be crude about it. It's way more complicated than that, which scientists are now applying because they realize how incredible it is. I've got the papers on it to trying to find out how they can make incredible processors. So melanin is our processing unit that's inside every single human being. Lithium-ion battery. We don't need lithium-ion batteries. We use water, structured water. And we also have memory within the structured water. How do we get the structured water? Through mitochondria. And one other thing, the sun. We get this structured water from the sun and a couple of other things as well. But that's it in a nutshell. Do you want to ask me some questions? Because I've talked for quite a while there. And is there anything else you want to just ask about what I've just said? Because this is going to change everything. Understanding this piece will change everything that you do in the work if you're involved in healing or wanting to heal yourself.
So, Richard, thank you so much. I didn't want to disturb you. You were like, like I said, you were like so into what you were saying. Just a small bit, when we talk about healing, we talk about energetics. How do you know that energetics really exist? How do you know that healing really does happen? Because you might tell me, okay, this is all there. I understand that, but how am I going to heal myself from this? And what's healing got to do with this? Thank you.
That's yeah. That I can answer. Let's go back to our computer, okay? And we can understand something about our computer. Let's take what is called a logic board of a computer. Now, this is a thing inside your computer that takes all the information, processes it, and then throws it back on the screen. It's what you're using right now in order to see me. It's incredible. The technology is absolutely incredible. But then just look at you or anybody you love or anybody. You are way, way, way more incredible than that. But, and it is a big but, forget the pun, what actually causes the let me just see, it's not showing up here. What causes the problems that we have inside of us is, there it is. I've got to just find it on the screen. Where is it? There. Is this. Now, when things go wrong in a microchip, it's really interesting, because if you take a thermal camera, infrared camera, and shine it on a logic board, well, this is one of those logic boards that you can see, you'll see if there's something wrong, it glows really hot. Now, this is a two-dimensional board. It's flat, right? So it glows hot. We are not two-dimensional. We are three-dimensional. And this was through the work of the HeartMath Institute and various other things as well, and understanding acupuncture and how we actually function. We, as a human being, we have a top. Let me give you a picture. We have a top, which we call spirit. We have a bottom, which we call earth. We have a feminine energy, a yin, a masculine energy, which is a yang. I like to put it, could be seen differently, but a future and the past. We are not flat chips. In fact, our melanin has a top, a bottom, a left, a right, a front, and a back. It's cube-like, actually. And so unlike a very clever but pretty dumb mobile phone or computer, we are three-dimensional, physical. Now, it appears, and this came about through something that happened back in 2003 with me and another guy called Tim Harnman, is that when we have a shock, something I coined, which was a Yudin moment, maybe I ought to go back to what that is. That Yudin moment shows up all the way around us, except in one of the cubes. Before I go into any more detail, let me just explain what a Yudin moment is, which also talks a little bit about the book as well, because inside the book, it's not all theory and all, oh gosh, and really complicated stuff, as Anu will testify. It's about a lady called Marcy who gets breast cancer and says she doesn't want to go down the traditional way, works alongside a medical doctor and me and another group, team, and she heals herself. Okay, she heals herself. So we release the traumas, we do lots and lots of things. And her name is Marcy. She's from New York. And so she starts every single chapter in the book. So there's this story that goes all the way through. And as I mention something, I put a citation to it, and then also go into the theory in each one of the chapters, of which there are 5 steps, maybe a little bit more on that in a moment. But let's just talk briefly about a Yudin moment, which is my bog standard way of explaining this.
Richard. Before you go there, can you tell people if they have to buy this book, where do they go? Because they might if they want to buy this book, how do they go about it? Because it just sounds like, oh my God, so much is there, and I really want to have the book. Then what do I do?
I went overboard, honestly. I went absolutely overboard on all the citations, but I also wanted it to be something anybody could read. You didn't have to be a medical doctor or a psychiatrist or have a degree or a PhD in X, Y, and Z. You could be a 13-year-old person and still get this, right? Okay. And it gives you answers that you honestly, just crazy, obvious, simple stuff. Some of it you could spend a lot of money on doing your healing, but most of it is super easy and super cheap to do. Because I was always thinking about the Indian people. They can't go off and fly from the United States to Germany to do a 20,000-30,000 detoxification. I can't afford that. So, why would I even suggest it inside the book? Okay. But you can do detoxification yourself very simply, for example, with charcoal. It's just... So this is where the book is. You can get it on Amazon anywhere in the world. I didn't really want to use Amazon, but this was the quickest and easiest way to get it everywhere in the world. So I don't know whether they have Amazon India. Do they?
Of course, they have Amazon in India, and every one of you can pick up this book from Amazon. And once again, what's the name of the book?
How Can I Heal?
So this is How Can I Heal by Richard Flook. And of course, he'll take us through further. Yes, Richard, please continue.
Okay, so let me just talk about a Yudin moment, because this is very relevant. This is something I coined many years ago to understand what the criteria was that caused a disease to be triggered. Okay, so this is my bog standard way of describing it. Imagine a husband and wife happily married for 30 years. The lady here could be our lady called Marcy. So got kids and grandkids, and this is before IKEA furniture. That's a joke. And then one day the husband walks in and says, I'm really sorry to tell you, darling. He's doing it in an English accent. He's actually American in the book. But I've been sleeping with your best friend. You know who I'm talking about. And I really love her, and I'm leaving. I've packed my bags. That's a Yudin moment. Why is it a Yudin moment? Because it's unexpected. It's dramatic. It's isolating. No strategy. The Yudin was just my way of trying to remember what the criteria was, and it sort of stuck. Why is that? Let me just go into that. Unexpected and dramatic, 30 years of marriage, it's unexpected. Let's say they didn't know that. Very dramatic, 30 years of marriage of her partner, her friend, her lover, just suddenly upping and leaving with her best friend. And she can't even speak to that best friend, the one person that she grew up with and was with all her life, and this is the guilty woman at the front here, or other friends, because they probably knew something was going on, but she didn't want to embarrass them. It's the same with men, not quite the same, but we wouldn't say very much either. Our pride would get the better of us, whereas embarrassment would be how a woman would deal with it. And there's no strategy. She's not going to say, oh, that's okay. You have a nice life, darling. I'm logging onto a dating website right now. See you. Now, you would, as a woman, say, that's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So a Yudin moment shakes a person's world apart. The Yudin has everything in it. Now, this is important. People's voices, the looks, the touches, the feelings, the taste, the smells, plus your own internal words. Now, who processes that? Melanin. Okay? So it shakes a person's world apart, and this is what one looks and sounds like.
What kind of father are you? You are the most completely worthless excuse for a man I've ever met. What kind of caregiver are you? What do you have to show forth to your kids?
So he's done something naughty and she's having a go at him. That could be a Yudin moment. It's a Yudin moment because it traps the energy, or the energy cannot flow. And I'll show you exactly how that works in a moment. Oh, I did it again. So how does it trigger disease? Well, it disrupts and stops light entering the body. Okay, it actually disrupts the light. So Yudin moments are picked up by the melanin in the body, which interact with the mitochondria. This stops light entering the body, specifically at the frequency of the Yudin moment, and this causes mitochondrial dysfunction. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention this, but you have anything from 500 to 10,000 mitochondria per cell. 500 to 10,000. There's also, and I couldn't find the research, but I have heard 100,000 mitochondria in that little organ in the middle of your brain called the substantia nigra, standing for substantially black. Mitochondria is black. It's made from carbon. If the ability of mitochondria to make structured water is impaired, then also disease occurs. If the ability of the melanin is interrupted, disease occurs. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, how does disease occur? It's a combination of melanin. It's a combination of disruption of, or mitochondrial dysfunction, which then can't structure the water. It's a disruption of the structured water is no longer there. In fact, what happens when it disrupts, it blows up, the cells blow up, and then we get localized inflammation. Okay. The word cancer actually means inflammation. Should give you an idea of what's actually really going on inside the body. It's way more complicated than that, but there is that particular piece. The other thing that is important is, notice I didn't mention DNA, which is pretty cool, isn't it, really? Which also says that what the medical profession are doing, going down this DNA line, is the same with what they did in 2020. Is they say, look at my hand and not what we're really doing over here. Okay, don't focus on that. Just look here. Okay, it's the same thing. We'll spend billions and billions and billions of dollars researching DNA, but actually it's a red herring. It's completely useless. Okay, it's just amazing. It really is.
So, Richard, you also were talking to me the other day and saying, hey, Anu, you love drumming, you love doing the gongs, and I can explain to you how that is connected with healing and everything. Could you explain to me, because we just left that halfway through? Yes, thank you.
So if we look at any therapeutic intervention, and we talked about light, right? We talked about light. Well, when I talk about light, I'm not talking about light in the visual sense. You see, I'm talking about light from across the whole universe, to be absolutely truthful. And that light can also involve sound as well as a form of light. In fact, you could call it sound or light. It wouldn't matter. They're both interchangeable. The melanin, and I'm going to go off on a slight intellectual piece. I did say that DNA is not really important, but genes are. And there is a gene called POMC, okay, spelled POMC. And POMC stands for pro-opto melanin cortin. What does that mean? That means that pro-opto relates to light. Melano relates to melanin. Cortin is a pathway. So it's promoting this whole pathway, which is what this gene does, and it produces basically melanin, along with a couple of other important amino acids. I'm giving you a very, very small understanding of it, but this gene is very important because we gained this gene from mammals. And there was a cataclysmic event called the K2 event, where I'm sure you've come across this. You may have read about it, heard about it, seen it, where at one particular time, there were all these dinosaurs on the planet, and then pop, they all disappeared. Now, it appears that what happened was the dinosaurs lived in between a certain longitude and latitude on planet Earth. They didn't go above, they didn't go below. And this an asteroid landed. It was 50 miles wide, which is like 80 kilometers wide, on planet Earth, and just shrouded the whole of planet Earth. And subsequently, the dinosaurs couldn't get food, and these dinosaurs were voracious eaters. They needed to sometimes eat their 3 to 4 times their weight in food a day. So if there's no food, they didn't survive, and that's apparently how they died. Now, during that time, there were these little furry critters in the ground who would hibernate, and they would also hibernate in the winter, and they would also be able to stay underground as well for very long periods of time. And they had fur on the outside of them, and there were other ones as well called birds. And this fur came from this gene called POMC, creating melanin. And melanin is this ability to be, or has this ability to be able to allow us to store energy, which where we actually came from were mammals. And what we also did when we became people is that we exchanged our ability to hibernate for our ability to be able to think, which is, I'm not saying anything that isn't in the literature, but basically that's what it is, which also how we are able to think such incredible thoughts is from melanin. and something called, you've come across it, dopamine, which is where we dope the amino acid to get dopamine. But when we do that, we actually pull melanin out of our system. So hopefully that's enough of a theory lesson for you. By the way, I didn't get this stuff, or I found that from a Dr. Jack Cruz. I'm going to cite my source that. And in fact, all the way through the book, I've cited my sources. So we are incredible. And I think I've lost the, oh yeah, and I think what I want to do is explain a little bit about how drum healing works, because what we're doing is with any intervention, but let's say drum healing has a specific set of frequencies. And these frequencies alter what I'm about to show to you. Let me get it on here. So we know, and I've also got all the research to back this up, that when we have a traumatic event, the trauma seems to be all the way around our body. So we have a shock, a divorce, losing a job, losing a child, or losing a loved one, or even a pet, or something like that. And this event shows up in all these quadrants around our body. We have this top, this bottom, this left, this right, front, and the back, which we can break into 8 separate quadrants. The science of this is just mind-blowing, okay? But it's real. And so in our melanin, how we transmit and create this field around us, remember, melanin is an electromagnetic field. It creates an electromagnetic field. It uses the structured water to access the memories. And we get the information from through our eyes, through our ears, through our skin, through our organs, and they are all vibrating at specific frequency in one big, beautiful quantum biological computer. And this quantum biological computer we could put in this sort of cube-like way of looking at things. By the way, this is based on sacred geometry, of which it's just unbelievable the way that all works. Again, all the citations in the book. So when we have a Yudin moment, it shows up on the left and the right in front of us, and below the heart level, which has one of the biggest fields around us, and below us, the left and the right, and also behind. But there'll be, because Yudin moments, what they do is that they completely knock us off balance. And they actually have a little picture of that. It's like someone just coming along and knocking us off balance. It knocks that square off balance. And if you've ever had a Yudin moment, it does. It can change the whole course of your life. So going back to our little picture here, how does drum therapy work? What it basically does is it communicates with the melanin inside of our body, sending it a frequency that basically says, not this, which is what you've been focusing on, but this. This is the true, real frequency that you want. This is the frequency perhaps coming from Mother Earth, coming from spirit, coming from the future, the past, the left and the right. And it just breaks down those old frequencies. It breaks down, it repairs, really. And there's a bit more science to this, but I'm not going to be able to go into too much detail. It repairs the silicon chip inside of us. But instead of doing it on a flat basis where you take one out and put a new one in, you are working with the senses, the auditory sense, the visual sense, the feeling sense, the taste and the smell sense, the word sense. And what you're doing is you're repairing this melanin cube, for want of a better word, the biological computer inside of us, which is why it works. It's the same with acupuncture or EFT. When we tap and we use words, right? Words are wonderful, and words have power. They have power because it's how we communicate. Pictures have power. It's because how we take information in. The sun has power because it's all about light. Okay, ultradian rhythms, which in 2017, 3 scientists won a Nobel Prize for their work on ultradian rhythms. Not ultradian, circadian rhythms, which is the day-night cycle. So we have in, say, drum therapy, which I know Anu does, and there's a whole movie where she's in that, is what it's doing is it's changing the old frequency and repairing that. But it's doing one other thing. Let's go back to our little picture here of this individual, could be a man or a woman, pushing the cube over. So what we see inside us is all this energy, this heat, like the silicon, the logical board in a computer. It's all trapped in one area, okay? And it knocks the whole board apart. The board in the computer cannot function. It's the same with this, only it's a cube and it's biological. And it affects one specific organ because the organ, remember I said at the start, has melanin all around it. It surrounds the organ. Here's something that will just absolutely blow your mind. You have inside your ear, inside the cochlea, it is surrounded by melanin. No light physically enters that part of the ear, but it does. Okay, it does. Again, why drum healing is so important, because you're working with that massive universal light spectrum. And melanin is carbon-based, meaning it's black, so it picks up on all the information coming from outside and then uses that information to create our interface for a computer world. I don't even like this way of putting it, but it's just one way to understand it. So a Yudin moment knocks us out of balance. And what we're doing with drum therapy is using the correct frequencies to recorrect that cube and push the whole thing back into balance. I think do I have a picture of one in balance? I don't have one here off the top of my head. I'll have to pick one up. Yeah, I'll go and see if I can pick up a one with the next moment in it, which is wonderful. But basically, the Yudin moments disappear and the cube goes back into balance. Does that somewhat give you an idea of what's really going on? In other words, you're not using drums to heal, you're using the energetic frequencies to rebalance the whole body, to take away the Yudin moments and to allow the individual to learn, to grow up and go beyond that whole interface without actually having to physically use the language to do it. But we can do it with sound, we can do it with electricity, we can do it magnetism, we can do it chemically. I don't know whether you've come across these psychotropic drugs now that people are using, where they're taking them into a different realm. You can use Joe Dispenza's work, which is all about meditation. Let's say, the Indian people have been using meditation, well, forever. We can use it through fascia decompression, where we're going inside the fascia and pulling that out. Every single modality has a place that can assist a client to heal themselves.